And welcome to Thursday. Now, today is January 16th, 2025, and hope everyone is doing well. Those of you who are new to the channel or new to the subject, the Delphi murders, um, welcome. And we hope that you enjoy this presentation tonight and perhaps learn something and maybe get to meet some nice people in the chat or the comment section. So I ask you to make yourself at home. Please go ahead and join the comment section. Hit the thumbs up. Enjoy yourself. If you feel so inclined, support the channel. Do all the nice things that you like to do. And we welcome you. And so tonight we will be covering what I am terming McCleared, another garbage PR piece from the Carroll County Comet. And it will be an educational experience. And so that's how we will go along. Okay. So God bless you all. I'm so glad you are here. And let me say hello to the few who are in the chat before we go too far. And then we'll get right into it. So we have Brenda Mace. Say what? Oleg Cat. Amy. Pam Sheehan. Mino Dino. L'Oreal. Deb. Heather Brown. Ricardo 2. Let's see who else is in here. Mark Ellis, welcome to the new membership, Mark. All right, Heather Brown, I said hello already. Who's your daddy? Tracy Fleetwood. And Ben Aaron. JT. It's a new day. Asha Harry. Bonnie. Gretchen Allen. Kayla. Welcome, Kayla. Ben Aaron says smash the like button. Please follow his advice, please. And we got Marcy McQuern, Judith Galloway, Jenny Grohl, Birdie81, Kay, Tawana, Christina, Jenny Liggett, Keith Kellogg, Marianne Foster, Jamie Bird, Teresa, TJ Bitts, Eliana Davidson, Dawn Steele, Robert Page, Jer, Laura Naran, Sarah, Noe Amos, Mandy Gilliand, Sarah, Joanne Laverne, Goddess, Pert Innit. All right, and I think I got everyone. So if you happen to be lurking and you want me to say hello, just join the chat. What's up, Mary Martin? There she is. Yeah, so welcome. So we're going to get right into it so we don't go too long tonight. I'd like to just get in and knock it out and then enjoy the rest of our evenings. Okay, so we're going to pull this up here. Cleared. Now, this is going to be interesting, right? So for all of you who are watching, tonight is going to require, at least the first half here, is going to require something called suspension of disbelief. Yes, oddly enough. In order to embark upon this journey tonight, in this rag here, we're going to be required to embark upon some suspension of disbelief. Suspension of disbelief is the avoidance, often described as willing avoidance, of critical thinking and logic, oddly enough. In understanding something that is unreal or impossible in reality, such as something in a work of speculative fiction, in order to believe it for the sake of enjoying its narrative. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing tonight, is suspending our critical thinking and logic in order to believe it for the sake of enjoying the narrative. Okay, so here we go. I warn you all, as I mentioned, if you're a first timer or new to the subject, please don't believe this off the bat. We are merely embarking upon a journey wherein we will explore the enjoyment of a fictional narrative. So here we go. For those of you who are super chatting, thank you very much, Jer and Jamie. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. I love it. I love you, the chat. I love you in the chat. So thanks for being here. I do appreciate it. Okay, so let me pull this up for my vision because as you may know, my vision, it's a challenge. Cleared. Carroll County Prosecutor Nicholas McLeland spoke to the Carroll County Comet Friday in his first interview since the gag order was lifted in the DELPHI double murder case. This is part of a continued series of firsthand perspectives, quote unquote, from those closest to the case by quote unquote journalist Amy Graham McCarty. And sorry, but that's a total gaslight in and of itself. But we'll get started anyway. Okay. So it continues. Cleared. 7 letters prolonged the investigation into the person responsible for killing Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Notice how they do not speak in speculatives or hypotheticals. This is all stated as fact. That's why I said you have to suspend the disbelief. Okay. Written in red on a tip sheet with information on tip number 74 was the word cleared. That one word allowed Richard Allen's self-reported tip to be filed away until 2022. A year earlier, in 2021, Carroll County Prosecutor Nicholas McLeland says investigators circled back to review the nearly 20,000 tips received in this case. All right, so first thing you should know is there's lies already. Okay, there are lies already. Why are there lies about the numbers of tips received? Because we're hearing 14,000, 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, and 70,000. Why can they not account for the specific number of tips received, filed in their system? Sounds like lies. But suddenly we're back from 50 or 70,000 tips. We're back down to 20,000 tips, according to this article here. Allen of Delphi was convicted and sentenced for the murders of Abby and Libby. He confessed more than 60 times to killing the girls. Do you notice what's left out of that sentence? like as is always the case with this, and I'm not going to interject too much, and I apologize already. You have to pay attention, just as much attention to the omissions as to the inclusions. Just like Tony Liggett's PCA for Richard Allen, which willfully omitted a description of a vehicle matching a 1965 Mercury Comet, and the fact that one of the alleged witnesses described an individual she witnessed as muddy multiple times before suddenly changing it to bloody, but whole different subject. We're not going to engage in that tonight. Just wanted to chime in on that. One of the omissions in this sentence, though, is that he confessed more than 60 times to killing the girls. Yeah, and what they left there, okay, what they left out there is that he was undergoing a major psychotic break. Many of the confessions were not direct, the majority were not direct confessions, but statements which were interpreted as confession like by law enforcement. And there were several statements that were confession like, which included details known to not match the crime. But of course, all that is omitted, right? All that is omitted. Uh, this is like I said, you have to suspend disbelief to and abandon all critical thinking and logic in order to follow along with this. So let's continue. For 2 years, McLeland and later his team of deputy prosecutors, Stacy Diener and James Luttrell Jr., has remained tight-lipped about the case, considering a gag order placed in December 2022 by special judge, oh, she's special, all right, Fran Gull, with the gag order lifted December 20th, 2024. He is allowed to speak. For after nearly a year of reviewing tips, okay, I'm sorry. I know I said I'm not going to keep interjecting, but I have to do this. Just remember, this is fantasy. This is a fairy tale. You must suspend disbelief because we are embarking upon a hypothetical, fictional narrative scenario. So what you're about to experience is a fictional scenario. It's a fairy tale. It's a hypothetical. It's a story made up in the minds of the PR team who initially set out to establish control over the narrative of these murders. So just keep that in mind, and we'll continue. After nearly a year of reviewing tips, Kathy Shank, a retired Division of Family and Children worker and investigative team volunteer and lifelong secret society member, generational, revisited tip 74. What she actually means there, because this is also inauthentic or not sincere. Uh, what actually happened, okay, what actually happened is a tip was placed into a desk drawer that she was unpacking. Mysteriously, a cleared tip. Tip number 74, mysteriously cleared, mysteriously placed in a desk drawer for her to mysteriously find, suddenly, magically, coincidentally. But as this is a PR piece, it is all being reported in bad faith. But this claims she revisited tip number 74. Allen's self-reported tip placed him on the Monon High Bridge on February 13, 2017, the day the girls went missing. The tip had information from Allen that he saw 3 girls on the trail between 1:30 to 3:30. But keep in mind, he does not place himself there between 1:30 and 3:30. This is law enforcement placing him there between 1:30 and 3:30. He places himself there between approximately noon and 1:30. So it's a whole other subject we'll be getting to at a later point. Allen told Indiana conservation officer Dan Doolin, allegedly, he was wearing clothing similar to a man recorded by Libby following the girls across the bridge and instructing them to go down the hill. The man was dubbed Bridge Guy. But keep in mind, when Allen's clothing was tested for DNA or blood spatter, they were absolutely clean. No evidence whatsoever of having engaged upon any sort of crime or any sort of bloody endeavor or any sort of contact with these two victims. But that's neither here nor there, right? This is a PR campaign. It wasn't misfiled, it wasn't lost because Allen's name was entered as Richard Allen Whiteman in the database. The reason we didn't find it was because on the tip someone wrote cleared. So we put it in the file that it was cleared, McClellan said. The file was marked accordingly. In 2021, we had a meeting with all law enforcement and said, hey, let's go back and review every tip and see if we missed something. Kathy had the wherewithal to read the tip and say, hey, this guy was on the trail that day. I've never read a tip with the name Richard Allen. This is important. Well, oddly enough, what is she doing reading the tips when she was instructed not to? What is she doing magically finding a tip at the perfect time in this case to maintain control over the Delphi murders investigation by this contingent? And what is she doing questioning a tip narrative that says cleared? I wonder who marked cleared on that tip? Why was it cleared? If it was cleared, don't you think that that meant something? And don't you think that the person who marked cleared on that tip could definitely step forward and explain how it was cleared? Yeah, but that's too much to ask for in Delphi. Shank took the tip to now Sheriff Tony Liggett. It clicked that this is the guy that everybody saw. And here we are, McLeland said. If there's a hero in that part of the story, it is Kathy Shank and Tony Liggett. Yes, but what they forgot to tell you is that Daniel Pearson was also there, identically matched one of the sketches, and was not even mentioned in this trial. Yeah. How about that for a tip? McClelland said learning of the tip left him with a, quote, mix of emotions, close quotation. It was a roller coaster, he said. No one knows who cleared Allen's tip in 2017. Hey, let's read that again. Let's read that again. No one knows who cleared Allen's tip in 2017. Oh, isn't that just rich? Isn't that just rich? You literally cannot make this stuff up. It's impossible. It's a thing. It's we don't know to this day who wrote cleared, said McClellan. There have been thousands of tips and tons of people working on it. The tip that was entered had cleared written in red on it, he said. It doesn't matter what name his name was filed under. The point is someone wrote cleared on the tip. Huh. Pause. Well, you know what's odd about that? If someone wrote cleared, there must have been a reason that they wrote cleared, because that person must have been cleared, because that's a bold move to make on a tip. And you would think, in a case of this magnitude, with worldwide attention on it, that whoever was the individual that did indeed write cleared on that tip would recall it and say, you know what? I think I remember writing cleared on that Richard Allen Whiteman. I guess I'm going to go ahead and step forward and explain the process by which I cleared that tip. I mean, I could make inappropriate jokes. I'll leave it to your imagination. I'll refrain from that. But I think everyone would understand what clearing a tip would be like. I've heard a lot of podcasts where they blame Dan Doolin. Dan Doolin is a good officer. He is thorough. He is a good officer. I don't think we should focus on blame. We should focus on Kathy having the wherewithal to bring it to law enforcement. Oh, remember, suspension of disbelief. We're just getting through it. Shank, he said, spent 8 to 15 hours a day volunteering her time, quote, because she loves the community and she wanted to help, close quotation. The only thing missing is an S on her chest for Superman because she is a hero, he said. You see, there's a lot of fetishization of people around this case, a lot of hyperbole, making the victims into heroes and crime fighters, sleuths, making Kathy Shank into Superman. It's a whole lot of gaslighting. But remember, in a fictional narrative scenario, you would have superheroes, villains, all of the above. And that's how it goes. These are characters in a fairy tale. Roller coaster ride. Once law enforcement determined Allen was a viable suspect, McLeland said he did not get excited. I've been working on this case for 7 years in February, starting a year after they died, he said. It was 6 years of highs and lows. Quote, hey, we got this person, and hey, we got this tip. You would ride the roller coaster up the hill, and it would be a huge letdown. Why did he have to say hill, up the hill? You notice Holman also made use of the term down the hill, bottom of the hill, down the hill multiple times in multiple interviews. It's more of the hyperbole and the gaslighting, like making all these people heroes, using the term hill multiple times. It's fiction. When investigators told him Allen was a suspect, McLeland said to himself, I'm not going to ride this roller coaster again. Let's see how this develops. I was a defense attorney for 9 years before I was a prosecutor. So my initial reaction to everything is, all right, prove it, he said. I put that on investigators and law enforcement. I do that every time I get a case. I say, all right, prove it. Which is how they come up with these talking points, right? Lost phone. When law enforcement gathered evidence from Allen's home on October 22nd, 2022, during the execution of a search warrant, something was missing. McClelland said investigators could not find the phone Allen was using in 2017. On that phone, there may have been potential evidence that could further connect Allen to the girl's murders. Had we gathered his phone 5 years before, we might have gathered more information, he said. He had a collection of phones dating back to 1998, but he didn't have that phone. Okay, so you see what they're trying to do there? Trying to incriminate him for not having that particular phone. But let me ask you, because surely you subpoenaed the cell providers. Surely you had evidence of text messages, web searches, geofencing, GPS coordinates. Let's be real here. You subpoenaed his cell providers. You would have had it. It's not that big of a deal that you didn't have the phone. He said he didn't know if he had that phone or not. He said his wife may have recycled it. But that was a big piece of evidence that we missed an opportunity to collect. Had we followed up in 2017, we would have a plethora of information on where he was, what he was doing, all those things. Hold on. You literally got the IMEI and other codes off of his phone. Like, let's be real here. Do you see how they're using that fact that they didn't obtain the physical phone in the search? They're using that fact to further incriminate him. Remember, this is a fictional narrative. This is a fairy tale. This is a PR piece. So the point of this is to establish a narrative in the reader's minds and to paint the defendant as guilty. The missing phone was important, McClelland believes. Allen kept in his possession phones dating back to 1998, leading up to the phone he was using in 2017. He also had phones in his possession that were used immediately following the phone he was using in 2017 and beyond. I don't know if it was big to the jury, but it was big to me, he said. I mapped out the release dates of the phones with Christopher Cecil, looking at when the phone was released. We know he had a phone for at least this long, so the next phone would be the next release date. There were obvious gaps around the time and around the murder where he had the phone after and before, but not at the time of the murder. It could have been a coincidence, but that was odd. That's where we found ourselves. Okay, so you see what I mean? They're using that fact, even though There's nothing incriminating about it, right? There's nothing incriminating about not having a phone. The phone could have been lost, like he said, recycled, traded in, any number of things with a phone. There's nothing bad about not having a phone, but they're using that talking point to further paint him as guilty. But like I said, are you kidding that they didn't subpoena all the information from that phone he would have had at that time and his cell provider? Let's be real. Doing it differently. Okay, doing it differently. For McClelland, looking back over the trial, he admits there are a few things he would do differently. Obviously, the tip being overlooked for 5 years is huge and unfortunate. He said, "It's not huge for trying the case, but it is a huge thing for the family. We had to go an additional 5 years. That's a big deal, and we can't blame anyone because we don't know who wrote cleared on the tip sheet." Oh, shucks. Can't make this shit up. The only other thing is, I would have someone testify about the pattern of life of Richard Allen while he was in jail. What he did day to day to have more impact for the confessions. Having an account of Allen's behaviors and actions leading up to and following his 60 plus confessions could have helped show the jury Allen did not make those due to being psychotic, he said. I don't know how much weight jurors put into confessions, he said. Obviously, they carried a lot of weight to us because I'm not sure why someone could confess to something they didn't do. Oh, let's talk about that. White nationalist gang members who are also corrections officers, members of the same group that probably killed these girls, threatening to kill his wife and daughter on a daily basis and threatening to kill him while he's being tortured in solitary and force medicated, banging his head against the walls, eating his own feces, undergoing a major psychotic break. That would be a reason someone would confess to something they didn't do. But like I said, we're embarking upon the suspension of disbelief. So let's keep going because we're about to really get served a heaping pile of BS. I think it would have more impact if we showed, oh, I said that. Okay. Some of Allen's confessions in the form of phone calls to his wife, Kathy, and mother, Janice, were played for the jury during trial. We played phone calls showing how he is talking about the weather, asking how mom is, how is dad doing. How are you? How's the cat? How's the dog? And then he says, Kathy, I just need you to know that I did this, he said. There are 700 to 800 phone calls. We couldn't play them all. That would be too much for the jury. The phone calls before and after, we should have played those to show this is normal. This is not under duress. And these confessions are legitimate, at least in my mind. When asked about why he believed in the same call Allen would confess his guilt, then ask, what if I did it, and say to his wife, I think I did it, McClelland said he believed it was because Alan did not get the reaction he hoped for. You see, his mind is so all over the place that he goes from I did it to what if I did it to I think I did it. If I confess to killing and I've talked to my number one, which for him was Kathy, and you don't get the reaction you expect, think about it, he said. He cares what she thinks. I'm using common sense and life experience, but I think we've all been in a situation where we don't get the reaction that we wanted and we fill the awkward silence. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. I don't buy into that. I buy into the most obvious answer is the right one. Gee. I know the facts of the evidence we have, and I use my life experience to evaluate a situation. When I see something, I call a spade a spade. I look for the most straightforward answer. Ooh. Oh, man. You're worse than that juror we heard from yesterday. How? The question many have asked over the last nearly 8 years since Abby and Libby went for a hike on the Monon High Bridge Trail, oh, did they? Is why and how. How is this question I've been asked the most? I asked them, have you ever had a gun pointed at you? And how would you react if you did? That's a unique experience that not many people have or ever will experience. Most people are kind, gentle people. When someone points a gun at you and says, do this, I've never had that happen to me, but I have an idea of how a 13 or 14-year-old girl would react. Well, I guess we'll keep going. Yeah, we'll do the commentary after. Individuals took to social media and YouTube to discuss the merits of the case, some speaking on authority on Alan's innocence and guilt. I would sit back and say, if you only knew the whole story, McLeland said of comments made online about the case. I'm very much the person that I'm not going to go on TV before a game and say, I am going to win this. Rate me as the underdog and play the game. Though social media didn't bother the prosecutor, he said he hoped people would take into consideration what their comments do to the families. I would always think, do you realize what effect this has on the family? That is the big issue for me because I know the family. Yeah, you're related to the family. Yeah, makes sense, doesn't it? Carroll County is known for being a tight knit community where neighbors help neighbors. It's also not unusual for familial connections as generations continue to reside in the area. McClellan said he never let those connections cloud his judgment. Remember, this is PR. They're telling you what they want you to believe. And that was deep. That was deep. Don't miss it. If that weighed into my decision making, then I would not be able to be the prosecutor. He said, it's not just this case. In every case, I know the mom, the dad. I graduated with the sister or brother. It's such a small community. I know 70% of the people I've prosecuted in one way or another. It had no effect besides it being more heartbreaking because I knew the girls before they died. I know their family. Their family knew my family. It's a small community. You should not have prosecuted this case. Listen, I knew the girls before they died. I know their family. Their family knew my family because you're related to the family. I was born and raised here. I feel very loyal to these people. The Allens. McClellan said, like many in the community, his interactions with Allen and his wife Kathy were minimal before he became a suspect in the murders of Abby and Libby. Oh, well, that means it did happen. Nothing besides going to CBS and Richard checking me out at the register, he said of their interactions. Back when he was there, they did not have self-checkouts. Richard and Kathy Allen were pretty low-key members of the community. They weren't doing anything to bring attention to themselves. Oh, right, they weren't bikers or pedophiles or meth cooks, right? Steve Mullen. Investigator Steve Mullen joined McClellan at the prosecutor's office and assisted with the case. He is more than an employee. He is also a friend. McClellan says he is hurt by the defense's accusations that Mullen is corrupt. Mullen is devout. When the defense said he lied, that affected him in a personal way. He said, to call him a liar, if you know him, it's just inappropriate. To say he lied, cheated, would steal, or is corrupt is inappropriate. He's one of the most honest guys I know. There's no other guy more devout than he is. And to call him corrupt, that cuts him to the core because he is not that person. Well, these people are pretty sensitive. These people are very sensitive to being seen as corrupt or dishonest. Pretty sensitive for guys in uniforms. But it gets worse. Threats. Threats against one character are uncalled for, McClellan says. But those are not the only threats his office has received. The threats were always indirect, he said. There's a guy in California who messages and says, looks like I have to come slash your tires. I get innocuous threats. You get people that say, what if this happens to your two little girls? What if I came to Indiana to do this to your girls? It's a threat. It's not direct, but it's still a threat in a roundabout way. Most of the threats and negative comments are coming from individuals outside of the Carroll County community. Oh, you want to talk about threats? Well, you know what's funny? Most of the threats I received are not indirect threats, they're direct threats to kill me, my child, my other child, my family. Yeah. Would you like to see the 15 death threats I've received in the past year from residents of Carroll County? Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I think I will be showing them because you're whining like a little baby about someone threatening to slash your tires. You're misrepresenting the fact that it's all of your side, the prosecution side, the troll farm side, the Delphi Carroll County side, that has consistently threatened to kill everyone on this side. And there's proof. So since you want to bitch and whine about it, I will be exhibiting that proof. I will be showing the truth that it's you unhinged Delphi Carroll County maniacs who threaten to kill, harass, and dox everyone that speaks against you. And you know what else? There's records of it. We're tired of it. It's all been submitted to law enforcement, FBI, and locals. I also submitted some right on to Doug Carter, who completely ignored it. You have people on your behalf and on behalf of the family, the Patty family, let me say it louder, the Patty family, on behalf of the Patty family, on behalf of the Indiana State Police, and on behalf of the prosecutor's office, are going around and threatening to kill people out here, direct death threats, and it's all documented, and it all has been submitted, and it will be dealt with. So you're whining about your little pissant threats to slash your tires? You're going to regret whining about that because you're causing me to shine a light on the truth of threats in this community. And the truth on threats in this community is not that you've been threatened. It's that we have been threatened. Okay? So since you want to play the threat card, we're going to talk about threats. And actually, next week, I'm going to be absolutely certain to do an entire expose on death threats in the Delphi community and prove how they come from those who are working on the behalf of the Patty family, the Indiana State Police, Carroll County Sheriff's Office, and the prosecutor's office. Hey, Google, if there was any evidence McClelland says he was surprised by during the 17-day trial, it was when the defense's digital expert, Stacy Eldridge, a former FBI forensic examiner and certified mobile device examiner, testified that something was inserted into Libby's cell phone headphone jack at approximately 5:45 p.m. on February 13, 2017, and removed at 10:32 p.m. the same evening. Did the state expect that testimony? No, McClelland said. The defense did a good job of hiding what they were going to use in court. When I heard it, I thought, that doesn't make sense. We saw it in the log, but again, it didn't make sense. It just didn't make sense. Right, because it doesn't make sense with your fairy tale narrative, your fictional story, your hypothetical situation that you tried to paint as fact. And you actually accomplished with the jurors because you didn't allow any of the actual truth to come into trial. Right. We gave those logs to the defense, so we knew it was there. I did not know their expert was going to give that explanation, so that caught me by surprise because she's an actual expert and your experts are dumbasses. The state's digital expert, ISP First Sergeant Christopher Cecil, examined Libby's phone and extracted data from it on multiple occasions. Christopher Cecil, what an amazing ISP officer. The intelligence in that guy and the knowledge of digital forensics, he knows his stuff, McClelland said. We spent hours and hours and hours together. I believe the defense thought that this was the reasonable doubt they needed. Whether the jury agreed or not, they didn't buy into it. Because the jury was lied to, it was misled, and the facts and truth of this Delphi murders case was hidden from the jury by your judge. McClelland said, with everything the state knew, common sense told them it was not possible someone physically plugged in a set of headphones in the port on Libby's phone and removed it at the time that the defense indicated. Oh, really? Really? Yeah. In your head, in what you'd like to believe, it's not possible. But in actual reality, it's entirely possible. And not only is it possible, it actually occurred that someone at 5:45 p.m. plugged something into the headphone jack and came back at 10:32 p.m. and unplugged it from that headphone jack. But like an ostrich, you don't want to know that fact, so you're going to bury your head in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist. As Eldridge remained on the stand, Cecil got to work trying to figure out a logical explanation as to what could have happened. So he went in the hall and did a damn Google search. It's not the ideal situation, McClelland said of the Google search. I think Jennifer Auger did a good job of saying this is not the ideal police work. You don't just do a Google search. But when you're put in that situation and the defense does trial by surprise, that's what you get. Noting the oddity of the search and its timing, McClelland said he stands by the information. Well, I guess that means something. As reliable as Google searches go, I think it was reliable. Are you kidding me that he just made that statement in a public relations hit piece? And again, what he found was common sense. Jennifer Auger did a good job in saying you don't use Google for trial. You are right, we don't. But when you spring this on us and don't tell us ahead of time, this is what you get. To me, it's just a common sense explanation. And it's a BS explanation because when we actually looked into it, the fact is that it could never happen the way that you claim. Okay, we looked at the patent. We also looked at the lack of water damage to the phone. If there was water damage to the phone, there would be water damage to the phone. According to the patent, there's a physical switch that must be activated. The defense objected to Cecil citing his finding from a damn Google search in court, calling it hearsay. But your biased judge, Gull, overruled the objection. I don't think it is hearsay because It is him commenting on the research that he has found, McLeland said. Some of Cecil's testimony is based on research that he had, like the distance of a flight of stairs. He did research. It's no different than that. No, it's hearsay. And it may be something that warrants appeal. Who knows? You may regret that it actually happened. Arge, McLeland noted, asked Cecil about the distance of a flight of stairs as recorded in Apple Health data. Libby's Apple Health data showed she traveled 2 flights of stairs between Alan. Here we go with the fictional narrative. Alan telling the girls to go down the hill and when they were murdered. Apple Health data. The Apple Health data extracted from Libby's phone was very significant, he said. Whether right or wrong, I bought into the Apple Health data and what it said. When you put it in the context of all the evidence we had, the Apple Health data coincides with all the data we had, he said. In fact, the phone didn't move after 2:30 p.m. The fact the phone didn't move after 2:32 p.m. was big. So, how do you explain the 2 flights of stairs? Because coming up from that creek up to where the bodies were found, it's not 2 flights of stairs worth of elevation change. So you're going to have to explain that better. See, that's something else the defense failed at and the prosecution got wrong. Marching the girls off the south end of the bridge, across the creek, and up the bank to Ron Logan's, it does not make sense. It never made sense. It only, in imaginary world, it made sense as a possibility at one point in time. But the closer you look at this, it does not make sense. How do you account for the fact that the girls are nude? How do you account for the fact that one of them is then redressed? It doesn't make sense. How do you account for the fact that the phone is not water damaged? It just there's nothing makes sense, but let's continue on wasting time. Gray can spew all the shit he wants about that headphone jack. The FBI will probably take care of it. Here's to the FBI taking care of it. As to why Allen would leave critical evidence behind is anyone's guess, McLeland says. Well, I'd like to guess for you. Because Allen didn't leave critical evidence behind. The perpetrators left that evidence behind because it was planted. Because that phone was part of the staging and part of the misdirection, part of the setup. That's why the phone was left behind. It was stuck under that girl's dead body to be found. It was loaded with a video of Bridge Guy, quote unquote, to be found. What goes through a person's mind when he kills 2 little girls? What goes through his mind after? I have no idea. he said. Common sense says, why leave the phone behind? You knew it was there. I have no idea. Of course, you have no idea because it's illogical. See, that's the thing. It makes zero sense. It's completely nonsensical unless you understand that it was intentionally left behind by the actual killers of these girls. Because this whole story doesn't make sense. If Alan was spooked, here, think about it. If Alan was spooked by this white van, don't you think he would have raced across the creek and gotten the hell out of there immediately? Do you think there would have been any time for undressing two girls, keeping them under control, keeping them from screaming, uh, taking the time to kill one, then taking the time to kill another, neither of which you leave defensive wounds on, then taking the time to redress one, then taking the time to stick a phone under one, then taking the time to walk out of there covered in blood, walking down a public street, somehow get in your car, not leave a single drop of blood in the car, not have a single drop of blood on your clothing that's found 7 years or 5 years later, and it's completely free of any evidence. Your car is completely free of any evidence, and I mean, it's completely, it doesn't work. If you were startled by a white van, you would have immediately dispatched. Okay, if you were going to kill the girls, you would have immediately killed them and got the hell out of there. If you were not going to kill them, you would have immediately fled. You don't get spooked and then hang around another 40 minutes. What he believes, notice how that word is used a lot with these people. But I'm sorry, I know I'm supposed to be suspending my disbelief. Okay. I know I'm supposed to be suspending my disbelief and reading through this, and I'm failing at this task. Okay. What he believes is that Abby purposefully hid the phone from her killer. It was not until crime scene investigators moved Abby's body to process the scene that they found Libby's phone under a shoe under Abby's body. But for Abby, holy cow, the phone was a huge piece of evidence, he said. She is a hero in her own right. See, once again, I said the fetishization of our victims and everyone in this case. You made Kathy Shank Superman. You made Abby a hero for hiding a phone, although she's dead, and although the phone is completely wiped off. Okay, and you made Libby a hero for taking a video which she didn't even know she was taking, which doesn't show the killer uh, in the way that you've portrayed. You're just completely gaslighting everyone and making these fantasy world characters in your mind in order to make this make believe story somehow compelling. Without Libby's phone, the investigation could have taken much longer, Mick Leland believes. To me, the video, the location of where it was taken, and the health app data are big pieces of evidence, he said. The video was powerful. If you think about the past 8 years, what's the one thing you've seen in the media these past 8 years? The altered, photoshopped make-believe video. Evidence from that phone. It was huge to me. No, 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 no. We have to correct that again. We have not yet seen evidence from that phone. Remember, I said yesterday, we're still waiting. We are still waiting to see that original video, unaltered, unenhanced, uninterpolated, non modified, non tampered, non photoshopped. We're still waiting to see what that is. Non stabilized, non zoomed, non, what do you call it, spliced. Sealing records. except for the video recorded by Libby on High Bridge on February 13, 2017. McClellan asked Gold to seal court records in the case. His reasoning, Richard Allen's best interests. I wanted a fair trial for Richard Allen. Sure, right. I felt like if everything was out in the public, we would taint the jury pool. Oh, we're going to be talking about that momentarily. This is why I was very tight-lipped about talking to anyone. He said, I believe in our system, whether you like it or not. I believe in it. I did it so we could have a fair jury. Oh, I did it to protect him. Oh, God, that's... Oh. No one is going to believe that. Yeah, you're right about that. You are right. But that's why I did it. Yeah, sure. That's what you're telling people. Frank's memorandum. Keeping information from the public only lasted so long. The defense would file their first of several Frank's memorandum in the case in September of 2023. That's actually inaccurate. They filed their only Frank's memorandum in September. But you mean their Frank's motions. There were 4 Frank's motions filed. Each incorporated the entire contents of each proceeding, as well as the entire contents of the 136-page Frank's memorandum. Okay, so let's get that straight. The court document, 136 pages in length, provided details on the crime scene, including evidence that had never been revealed to the public. A cartridge found between the bodies of the girls that had been discharged from a Sig Sauer gun, and the defense's belief that members of a Norse pagan religion, heathens, or Azatru, murdered the girls as part of a ritualistic killing. I appreciate his perspective, but I don't agree with it, McClellan said of defense attorney Andrew Baldwin, telling media recently that legally they could not file the Frank's memorandum confidentially. It just goes back to common sense. McClellan said, we investigated every lead. There is not a lead we did not investigate. Really? Did you investigate 50,000 or 70,000 tips? Did you truly? Why are you changing it to 20,000 at this point in time? I'm trying to understand that one. That one's not logicking. We used to say, if the lead has legs, we're going to go with it. That means going down the rabbit hole until we prove or disprove it. I really think Odinism is a testament to investigators. When you first hear about it, it sounds ridiculous. An investigator said, no, we're going to go down the road and investigate. Sure, right. They stayed with it until they disproved it. Sure, right. Yeah, they disproved it so much they had to Todd Click had to write it a letter, have it mailed, certified mail, to force you to even look at it. At the end of the day, I'm glad to charge whoever is responsible for this. Really? Is that true? But you've got to prove it. Well, hey, maybe that's what another trial will do. The defense could not prove it from our evidence, and we couldn't prove it from our evidence. Right, but here's a question for you. What about the 70 days that were intentionally deleted by, your task force, Unified Command? Do you think that perhaps those 70 days of deletions could have proved what actually happened? or at least proven exculpatory. Just asking for a friend. At the end of the day, no, I'm sorry. To me, that's the end of the story. A letter. One of the investigators who looked into ritualistic killings was former Rushville Police Chief Todd Click, along with now deceased, assassinated Task Force Officer Greg Ferenczi and former ISP investigator Kevin Murphy. Look at that. They couldn't even respect the memory of Greg Ferenczi enough to spell his name properly. You see that? You see that? You actually misspelled Greg Ferenczi's name. How disrespectful. We know it's because you hate him. Okay, it's very clear. You hate Greg Ferenczi, just like you hate Todd Click and Kevin Murphy. That's very clear. Let's be real here. And Andrew Baldwin and the whole nine. But you could have spelled his name right. Okay. Click, wanting to be sure McClellan and investigators had thoroughly investigated the Odinist angle, sent him a certified letter after Allen's arrest. If you read over it, it piques your interest, he said of the letter. I brought Todd Click in to talk and said, tell us what you know. No. See, that's a misrepresentation. It was admitted that Holman brought Click in to convince him of why your theory of the crime about Allen was correct, and to put his worries at ease, to brainwash him, to coerce him, to convince him that the prosecution's case or law enforcement's assertions were correct. And you also used it as an info farming opportunity. You wanted to know everything he knew. You wanted everything he had. And you got it. Yeah, that's what really happened. Let's be clear about that. There is the theme out there from defense-friendly people that I am corrupt and covering up for people. I would not cover for anyone who committed this crime. Oh, you're really concerned about what people think out here, right? That's the second time you've said it. Sound like Holman. We called Click up and asked him to explain. I said, let's talk about it. Give me your best pitch, if you will. We investigated it like we did everything. Sure. If I went to trial based on what I think happened, I would not win. You have to have evidence to support what you think happened, and we did not have evidence to support that theory. No, listen, did you have evidence that Abby hid the phone under her body? Did you have evidence that she was a hero and Libby was a hero, and that did you have evidence that Alan was bridge guy? And no. But you still convinced the jury, right? So you're kind of misleading there. Is it a conspiracy theory that they all came together and committed these crimes and no one is talking? Or is it that Richard Allen was on the bridge that day and decided to kidnap and kill those little girls? Which makes more sense? Well, actually, I'm glad you asked. What makes more sense is that a bunch of meth heads who were known to congregate under that bridge and around that area, smoking, cooking meth, shooting, cutting, initiating, sacrificing animals, doing all this sort of shit. Kind of makes sense that at that date, at that time, at that place, that that they would do that. And based on what the community has based on what has surfaced from the community since that very day, it seems very likely that that's actually what happened to the girls. That's why people are reluctant to believe this lone wolf killer theory, and even more reluctant to believe that it's Alan that is a lone wolf killer, because there's zero DNA evidence, zero fingerprint evidence, zero blood evidence, zero evidence at his house, zero, 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 zero. So people don't believe it. It makes much more sense that a group of guys who are up to no good would do this at this place at this time. And that's what the community has sort of oozed. It's oozed out of the community since February 14, 2017. It's oozed out of the family. It's oozed out of all the meth heads and the murderers and the cartel members and everyone. The entire criminal underworld of Carroll County has, it's basically oozed out of that community. This is why people suspect this sort of thing. You see, and it's odd that the whole Frank's memorandum sort of scenario almost kind of indicates something like that. It's just there's a different flavor to it. And I've said many times, I don't necessarily believe with that flavor or believe that flavor, but I understand that it was all the defense had to work with. But I ask you, what do we have of Christy Lynn Martin and Palladino, Garrett Kurtz, Gabe Ellis, Derek German, Megan Allen, and this whole crew? Others. The defense stated during hearings that missing audio of interviews completed by law enforcement of third-party suspects with alleged ties to Norse pagan religion was reckless, if not intentional, by the state. Oh, that's good. The audio is said to have been recorded over, quote, unquote, unbeknownst to investigators. And here we go with lies. Okay, here we go with lies. Here we go with lies. Those interviews are documented in the reports, Mick Leland said. I don't fault the defense for making that an issue. It is regrettable that it happened. It was. Wait. I thought that you cannot account for whose interviews were deleted. I thought you could not account for who was interviewed when, where, which were deleted. You had no log, you had no indication, you didn't know. See, that sounds like you're misleading the general public with that statement. That's almost an outright lie. Because as far as I recall, those deleted interviews, those 70 days of deleted interviews, that entire first week of deleted interviews, seems like there's zero record of who that was. So saying that they are all documented in reports, that seems like a misrepresentation of the truth. Whether the defense wants to believe the reports, I understand want to hear the actual words. To me, it wasn't an issue. I understand why the defense wants to make it an issue. I was a defense attorney for a long time. I would have done the same thing. Yeah. Wouldn't you have questioned why can't you even account for who was interviewed on those days, the 70 days that were deleted? And now you're out here as a prosecutor and as a master mason, and you're trying to allege that all of that's accounted for when we know it's not. There was nothing of merit to warrant a further investigation into other individuals. Enough to convict. McLeland says He believed from the day he filed the probable cause and arrest warrant in the case that he had enough to convict Allen for killing Abby and Libby. The evidence he considered key was the cartridge found at the crime scene between the girls' bodies. You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me, man. That cartridge was determined to have come from a Sig Sauer P226 handgun recovered from Allen's home when police executed a search warrant in October 2022. And it's junk science, and even the jurors threw it out. Remember, we read that last night. Even the jurors threw out that junk science because they knew it was. Okay, so let's not kid each other here, bro. Come on. For me, the aha moment for the state was when we got the ballistic report. Oh, you mean the junk science report? Telling you what you wanted to hear? And the bullet matched the gun. Oh my God. There's this fucking fake belief, man. I believe that in science, I believe in that science. I just believe in it, he said. I don't have my team together at that time, but I believe the evidence we had was enough for an arrest and probable cause and enough for a conviction, or I would not have filed. You never know what jurors are going to do. I don't care if you've been practicing for 2 years or 50. If you could read a jury and know what they're going to do, that would be a skill we would all like to have. For McClellan, defense attorney Brad Rozzi may have not been reading the jury when he giving his closing argument. There's a point where in the defense's closing, they showed a rack used for medieval torture, he said. Sometimes you go too far and you lose the jury. I could have objected. It was absolutely inappropriate for them to show that. I let it go. Part of trial work is reading the room and seeing how people react. You have to watch the jury and how they are reacting. They are your audience. He was losing them, so I didn't object. I thought, let them go this far. He's going to lose the jury. The van. During the trial, McClellan said Allen confessed to a key piece of evidence that only the killer would know. That information, he said, came in one of Allen's quote unquote confessions to his Indiana Department of Corrections psychologist, Dr. Manakawala. Allen told Walla he was spooked, quote unquote, while he held the girls below the bridge. Allen said he had intended to SA the girls, but saw a van. He then chose to take them across Deer Creek and kill them. He doesn't say white van, McClellan says. He says a van. Did all of you know that? Everyone out there know that? So he didn't say white van. He said van. People associate a white van because they see a photo of Brad Weber's van. Makes it even more unlikely that it's an actual true confession. Remember, knowledge of that van was out there since day one. I've proven it to you. It was out there since day one. Gray Hughes knew that the story about a confession about a van was going to be used. Before trial even came, Gray Hughes announced on his show that it was going to be discovered that Richard Allen was spooked by a van pulling up the drive. Then took them across the creek and killed them. Yeah, true story. But she's still able to be a but she's still able to operate as a medical provider. You see? All right. Oh yeah, don't worry. But defense investigators downloaded his entire channel before he could delete it. So, too bad. Late. I mean, too late. Too late, Gray. Carroll County resident Brad Weber lives at the end of the driveway that travels under the high bridge. He testified he was driving a white van home and under the bridge around 2:30 on February 13, 2017. It has been shared on social media that the information regarding Weber's white van was on the internet, making it easy for Walla to feed the information to Allen during one of her sessions. Was it out on social media? I wasn't following social media, so I have no idea, Mick Leland said. The state's perspective was, we didn't think that anyone knew a van had traveled down the road under the bridge at that time. Oh, are you? You see, this is willful ignorance. He doesn't want to know that it was out there. I mean, a simple Google search will give you all the hits that you need to see. Come on, man. It's all lies here. McClellan said information about the van was learned when the state acquired access to Allen's mental health and medical records from the IDOC. The judge denied the state's request for mental and medical health records twice, saying it was privileged information. He said the defense brought it up in pleadings and the judge finally granted it. Walla testified in court that she had followed Allen's case before and after he became her patient. The defense used that information to attack her credibility. Yeah, rightfully so. I don't know if the jury believes she was reliable or not, Mick Leland said. We thought she was. That's why we put her on the stand. If you go with the defense's theory, she made all this up. What does common sense tell you? You go where the evidence leads you. I'll tell you where common sense puts me is that she was a true grime fangirl, desperately in need of entertainment, attention, and relevancy. And she managed that by inserting herself into the Delphi murders. Kind of like our juror did that we covered last night. Plea deal. This one goes out to our failure of the decade, Ruckus Rocks. McClellan said he offered Allen a plea deal early on, but Allen declined. He's going to plea, I guarantee you. There was a plea deal, he said. It wasn't a lucrative deal for Allen. What are you going to offer a guy who kills two girls? Leaked photos. This one going straight out to Mark Cohen and Tommy Frost. And the entire Troll Farm family, when asked if he felt the defense intentionally leaked photos of the crime scene, McClelland said he would respect Gold's ruling. We presented the evidence that we had at the contempt hearing, and the judge found it wasn't intentional. And I respect the judge's decision, he said. When he initially saw photos from the crime scene, he says he became emotional. I got choked up. What if it was your kids? Yeah, well, what about the guy dying? Did you get choked up when you found out about the guy dying? You know, leaving a daughter and a wife behind, and friends and family? That is what I want to say to those who have shared and posted the crime scene photos. Put yourself in the position of the family and imagine seeing your daughter in that state. Just imagine it, he said. I visualize my own two girls. And I mean, talk about victimizing the victims. I think Becky Patty said it's best. It's generational. Every time someone Googles it, think of Becky Patty, Derek German, Anna Williams, Kerry Timmons, for them to have to see that in public, to see it projected. Yeah, well, maybe what you should have done is convict the right people for the murders of those girls, and no one would care about looking at those photos to see the stick arrangements that prove that it's not Richard Allen. McClelland said the Patty family was delivering food, banana pancakes, to those standing in line trying to get a seat in the courtroom during the trial. For them to have that strength. Oh, here we go with making heroes again. Here we go with the fetishization of the family of the victims, making them heroes to endure the trial. And then people to go that day and badmouth them. They are what we should try to be like, he said. Oh, okay, we should all try to be, announcement. McClelland says we should all try to be the Patty family. Got it? Got it. The defense wants to talk about being human. Those are humans. I don't know how I could do that. I think I would be bitter and mean. But again, members of our community, of this community, holy cow, they are something else. Yeah, forget all the fucking felonies, the drug charges, the child crimes. Forget all those things, and just worship them. Pretend they're lily white, perfect Midwesterners, Christian family, spotless, the picture of Americana. That's your duty. Okay. Due to double jeopardy, Allen could not be sentenced for the 4 counts of murder he was convicted. 2 counts of felony murder and 2 counts of intentional murder. I added intentional murder in January 2023. McClelland said, the felony murder I originally charged him with because I believe he kidnapped the girls and they died. I had the other 2 counts added because I was at the point where that was appropriate to add because I felt he intentionally killed the girls. Yeah, there's something with this too, and we'll be exploring that further in the future because there's something about that just doesn't smell right. You never know what a jury is going to do. You present the evidence you have. I thought we had a strong case. I thought we had the right person that committed the offense. He was presumed innocent until the jury came back. No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. If he was presumed innocent, he would have never been placed into Westville. He would have never been placed in the solitary. He would have never been threatened with death by the other inmates and the Odinist guards. Okay, he would have never been forcibly medicated, allowed to go into the state of psychosis. He would have never been treated the way he was if he was presumed innocent. Let's be right. Let's be honest here. Paraded around in all the shackles and the shock vest and the way he was paraded around here, like he's worse than Hannibal Lecter. He would have never been paraded. Look, you got someone like Kohlberger. He's not paraded around like that, is he? But you paraded Richard Allen around like that. Even these defense attorneys who have 50 years experience say they've never, ever seen a pretrial detainee paraded around and treated like Richard Allen. He was not presumed innocent. Let's be honest here. To Richard Allen. McClelland said he has nothing to say to Richard Allen. I don't want to sit down with him, he said. I presented the evidence we had in court. The jury found him guilty. If you believe in the system as I do, what else do I need to hear? Appeal? What answer could he give to give solace? No answer he could give me would justify or make it okay. Oh, you're assuming that he committed the crime, sir. I was pretty adamant at the press conference. I don't want to say Richard Allen's name again. He's the defendant, the convicted. This should be about Abby and Libby and how amazing they were. Stop fetishizing my victims. To the families. McClelland said he admires the families, his relatives. He admires the family's faith and perseverance over the last 7.5 years. I applaud their strength and compassion, he said of his family members. We should strive to be like them, he said of his family. We really should. What they went through, and to not be bitter, they are compassionate in the face of evil, he said of his family. Imagine what the family was feeling, he said of his family. I champion them for being there every day, supporting us, and obviously being cordial and respectful as they were. I'm not sure how I would feel if it were my kid. For years, McClelland worked side by side with investigators, attorneys, and families, his own family, fighting for justice for Abby and Libby. I just want everyone to know I did not do this alone. Oh, here we go with hero complex. He said it takes a village. Took this village. Jerry Holman. Oh, it sure did take Jerry Holman. My staff, Stacy Diener, Jim Luttrell, Tony Liggett. Yeah, I agree. It took all of them. And it took Kathy Shank. I could have not done this without their help and support. They deserve and have earned as much praise and gratitude as I am getting. Oh, you like that, don't you? You slick that hair back, do a couple lines, and take it all in. You breathe in that victory, boy. They deserve and has earned as much praise and gratitude as I am getting. I could not have done this without them. All the investigators, too. And Kathy Shank. Talk about an unsung skank hero. I mean, sorry. I added that word. That was my bad. My bad. Say I love you. In his years working as a defense attorney, McClelland says he has represented some of the worst defendants you can imagine. It never affected me. And then I had kids, he said. This is where he demonizes all the... look, everyone out there, perk your ears up. I know I've been annoying and all this shit, and you've been listening for a while. Look, but perk your ears up right now. This is where he demonizes all defense attorneys in the entire world. He's literally about to demonize every single defense attorney on earth. Like it never affected me. Then I had kids. You watch them take their first steps, say their first words. There's something about them that I can't explain in words. It made me more emotional. Being a dad of girls makes you kind of a wimp. The biggest effect Abby and Libby's case had on me is every time I see my kids and loved ones, I think I better tell them I love them. When you look at your loved ones, never miss an opportunity to tell them I love you. And then notice here all the other PR pieces by Amy Graham McCarty for the good old Carroll County Comet. All right. So, unfortunately, there's more. Okay, so what you've just experienced, as I told you, you had to suspend disbelief because you just experienced a bit of public relations. And honestly, it's funny. It just shows you that they know this is not over. Okay. I guess the bottom line is they know this is not over. Because if they felt this was over, you wouldn't be getting all of this. You wouldn't. They would all just go away, shut up, and move on. But they're coming out with such force that it's indicative that they are very well aware that this is not over by any means. Okay, so you should be. If they think it's not over, then why on earth would you think that it's over? So I had an interesting comment on the channel the other day. And it was about the fact that a PR firm was hired in the early days of the Delphi murders to control this narrative. And that's been obvious. You know, that was the whole purpose of the troll farm. You may remember very well. A year ago, it was something else. They were at full force. But you may remember troll farm. You may remember all of the channels. How 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the Delphi-related channels were all about pushing this narrative for years, for 7 years. All of these, the primary channels, pushed the state's narrative for 7 years. Well, it's no coincidence. It's no mistake. It's an effect. So we're going to look at the cause. Okay, we're going to look at the cause of that effect. This should be informative to you, maybe at a bare minimum, entertaining, hopefully. But I'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. But this is for enlightenment as to what we're dealing with here in the Delphi murders. I think it's very important for you to understand what we're dealing with. Okay, because if you don't understand what we're dealing with, you'll look at this as an authentic community, as random occurrences, as genuine actions. That's the way that I looked at it before coming into this, right? I was naive, to put it not so kindly, stupid. Therefore, when the troll farm assaults began, the moment I mentioned Becky, Patty, and Kelsey, I was kind of I was blindsided because I never expected to be hit with the whole brunt of force of an entire troll farm, just because I mentioned Becky and Kelsey. So hopefully this will help some people, especially new people, but even you long timers, to better understand. Okay, you need to better understand what we're actually dealing with and what we have been dealing with. And like I said, it's odd that after trial we're still dealing with it. It just tells you they know it's not over until all appeals are over. Okay, so we're gonna get into studying this real quick. It'll be entertaining, and it's the best source I found for this information. I hope you enjoy it. It'll be worth doing. I don't know why my nose wants to start running the minute I am ready to start reading. Thank you very much. Someone just sent a super chat. Jake Brooks, thank you very much. Jake Brooks, thank you. All right. Here we go with the nose. The drip is starting. All right. Cornell University Law School. Okay. Pretrial publicity effects in making a murderer. The issue of pretrial publicity and its effects on the jury pits two U.S. constitutional amendments against each other. On one hand, the Sixth Amendment guarantees a criminal defendant's right to a fair trial. On the other hand, the First Amendment affords the media freedom of speech and freedom of the press. This inherent tension between the two amendments is especially salient when negative publicity about a criminal defendant finds its way to the ears of the jurors, because having an impartial jury is an essential component of a fair trial. Unfortunately, the law does not require that jurors be free of opinions about the defendant's guilt to be qualified to serve on a criminal jury trial. A juror simply has to say he or she can put aside any opinions about the defendant's guilt and listen to the evidence. The model rules of professional conduct have promulgated rules to curtail the effects of publicity on a particular trial. Rule 3.6a, which applies to all lawyers, prohibits a lawyer in a proceeding from making comments to the media that can cause a, quote, substantial likelihood of materially prejudicing a proceeding, close quotation. Prosecutors are subject to an additional standard. Rule 3.8f provides that prosecutors must also refrain from, quote, making statements to the media that can lead to heightened public condemnation of the defendant, close quotation. Failure to comply with the model rules could potentially result in disbarment for the offending lawyer. And now you see, this is why they had to parade him around, shackled as he was shackled, guarded like he was, 13 foot tall and 450 pounds. They could not use words to turn him into a threat. They had to use imagery to turn him into a threat. And this is why they absolutely succeeded in doing that. The intention of parading him around like he was Hannibal Lecter was influencing the potential future jurors into the thought that he is a great threat, therefore guilty before trial. Furthermore, the tribunal has various mechanisms to remedy the effects of pretrial publicity. The tribunal could order a change of venue so that the jury trial is moved away from the county where the crime occurred, or the tribunal could import jurors from another county. In the Brendan Dassey trial, for example, the jury was imported from Dane County because of the intense media attention in the Manti-Oak area. Nonetheless, given current technology and the widespread use of the internet, the court must come up with other ways to remedy the effects of pretrial publicity. Pretrial publicity undoubtedly played an enormous role in the trial of Stephen Avery for the murder of Teresa Halbach. Publicity surrounding the case was extremely high. The prosecution held a pretrial press conference detailing the gruesome death of Halbach. Evidence was subsequently not admitted into court. Specific examples of negative pretrial publicity will be discussed in further detail later. This webpage will focus on the impact of publicity on Stephen Avery's trial, along with that of Brendan Dassey's. This webpage seeks to address whether trial publicity influenced the jurors' decision-making capabilities in both trials. Part 1 will introduce various social science research that demonstrate the effects of pretrial publicity. Section A will examine the effects of positive pretrial publicity. Section B will consider the salience of pretrial publicity. Section C will discuss the effects of pretrial publicity on jury deliberations. Part 2 will dive into Stephen Avery's case. Section A will discuss publicity surrounding Stephen Avery's wrongful sexual assault conviction. Section B will examine Stephen Avery's trial for the murder of Teresa Halbach. Section C will consider recent publicity surrounding Stephen Avery, especially after the release of Netflix Making a Murder documentary. Part 3, which concludes the webpage, will discuss the best methods to prevent the poisoning of the trial by pervasive trial publicity. Part 1, the effect of pretrial publicity. Numerous studies support the conclusion that pretrial publicity affects jurors' decision-making processes. As the research shows, this is true regardless of whether the pretrial publicity is negative or positive. What crime the defendant is charged with, and how long ago the jurors were exposed to pretrial publicity. In a meta-analysis published by the American Psychological Association, researchers analyzed 44 independent empirical tests to examine what effect, if any, pretrial publicity had on jurors. The meta-analysis was conducted by first gathering prior experiment results from a database and researchers directly. The experiments needed to have a statistical test on the effect of pretrial publicity on judgments of guilt or innocence. However, the types of pretrial publicity and the amounts given to subjects differed across the studies. The sample they obtained contained studies from 1966 to 1997 and tested 5,755 subjects. Samples were then categorized depending on the amount of information given to the control group, whether the pretrial publicity was real or fabricated, whether the study was an experiment or a survey of residents, the medium it was presented in, the type of crime, and more. The results of the meta-analysis showed that across studies, those subjects that were exposed to negative pretrial publicity were more likely to find the defendant guilty than those exposed to less or no negative pretrial publicity. And now you see what happened in Delphi. More specifically, the researchers found that negative pretrial publicity had a significant effect on their judgment of the defendant. The researchers also broke down their results by previously identified categories. They found that the survey method, in which they surveyed subjects from jurisdictions in which there was exposure to real pretrial publicity and a real trial, had a larger effect between the pretrial publicity and juror decision making. While the experiments had a lesser effect size than the surveys, the pretrial publicity still significantly affected the jurors. This is important because the surveys more closely simulate what actual jurors are exposed to before a trial, which means that real jurors are likely strongly affected by pretrial publicity. In addition, the meta-analysis found that there was a higher effect size when subjects were exposed to more specific information about the defendant and the crime, as opposed to when they were exposed to just general information. The factor that produced the greatest effect size was the type of crime the defendant was accused of committing. And let me pause here. And you see, this is why it was extremely important over these years for them to paint Abby and Libby in a certain light as just innocent little girls out on a stroll at the trails who were victimized by this phantom monster of a bridge guy. You see, this is why it was important from day one to establish this narrative, to consistently paint this picture. This is where today is the day stems from. It was a constant, a daily reminder of the finding of this monster on the bridge. And it's why you turn these girls into heroes. Again, the factor that produced the greatest effect, keep in mind each word that I'm saying, it's important. This is a study. Was the type of crime that the defendant was accused of committing. Okay? The result shows that cases involving murder or SA had greater effect size both in the survey and experimental designs. The data also found that prejudgment is the time point with the greatest effect of pretrial publicity. The researchers note that pretrial publicity effects are particularly important because even a small amount of bias before trial or even during trial contradicts the legal presumption of innocence. So you see? Emotions and positive pretrial publicity. In the study, researchers decided to study the effects of positive pretrial publicity on jurors. The researchers exposed subjects to negative pretrial publicity, positive pretrial publicity, and no pretrial publicity, and measured the credibility ratings they gave to the defendant, their verdict, and their guilt ratings. They found that those exposed to negative pretrial publicity, quote, were significantly more likely to vote guilty, indicate lower guilt ratings, and rate defendants as more. I messed up. Jeez. The exposure to negative pretrial publicity caused jurors to be significantly more likely to vote guilty, indicate higher guilt ratings, and rate the defendants as less credible. You see what I mean? Researchers also exposed jurors to positive pretrial publicity. Those exposed to positive pretrial publicity, which is pretrial publicity that was favorable to the defendant, were more likely to vote not guilty, indicating lower guilt ratings and rating defendants as more credible. The researchers also measured the subjects' emotions after they were exposed to the respective pretrial publicity types and had watched the trial. They found that those exposed to negative pretrial publicity had a higher anger after watching the trial. This emotional response led to positively higher guilt ratings and guilty verdicts. The study also found that jurors were likely to distort the witness testimony that they heard to support the pretrial publicity that they were exposed to. That's huge. Now, positive pretrial publicity led to a pro-defense bias, and negative pretrial publicity led to pro-prosecution biases. Okay, so you see, regarding the defendant, it's obvious. PR, that is positive, will lead to a positive bias. Pretrial publicity, or PR, that is negative, will lead to a prosecution bias. And what have we been saying since the arrest of Richard Allen? Okay, section B, persistence of pretrial publicity effects and quantity. In another study published by the American Psychological Association, researchers examined the salience of pretrial publicity throughout the trial process. The researchers surveyed mock jurors in New York City, where an actual trial was taking place, and they were naturally exposed to the pretrial publicity, and Boston, where they were far removed from the New York case and were experimentally given the same pretrial publicity as those in New York. The researchers tested the salience or persistence of the pretrial publicity at 3 points throughout the trial process: 2 weeks before the trial, during the trial, and immediately following the conclusion of the trial. Researchers gave both the naturally exposed and the experimentally exposed groups trial evidence to review over the course of the 8 weeks. The results showed that at each of the three time points, pretrial publicity effects persisted. They found that although there were shifts in the guilt ratings throughout the time points, for example, guilt ratings dropped when prosecution evidence was presented, there was still a significant difference between groups. Those that were initially pro-prosecution had higher guilt ratings, and those that were pro-defense had lower guilt ratings. This pro-prosecution and pro-defense slant remained constant or consistent before the trial, during the course of the trial, and after jury instructions were given, even after evidence was presented. This is important because it suggests that evidence and jury instructions do not erase pretrial publicity biases. The results of this research also showed that the greater the quantity of exposure, the more biasing the effects. This means that the more coverage there is on a particular case, the more likely it is that a juror will be biased by the pretrial publicity. Now let's take a pause here. What did you see from day one coming out of Carroll County? And look, I mean everything. I mean every billboard, every Gray Hughes talk with the family, every statement by Doug Carter, press conference, every billboard, every post on Facebook. Like, it was a platform-wide, broad public relations effort from day one. Keep in mind, before the arrest of Richard Allen, you had 5 years of pre-trial publicity, or PR, causing anger, bloodlust, frustration, negativity, a thirst to convict someone, particularly this person painted out or made out to be as bridge guy. And then at the arrest of Richard Allen, you had him consistently from that moment forward marched around, shackled at the legs or at ankles with his shock vest, with multiple guards, marched around like he was the greatest threat in the state of Indiana, or in the United States. I would venture to say in the United States, period. So it was a cross-platform, 7-year effort of public relations. And you wonder how you got a guilty verdict. Jury deliberations, Part C. Finally, a study by the Department of Psychology at the University of South Florida found that pretrial publicity exposure affects the way mock jurors deliberate about the evidence. More specifically, the researchers found that jurors exposed to negative pre-trial publicity were more likely to discuss ambiguous trial facts in favor of the prosecution's case, and rarely ever use them to support the defense's case. The research also found that despite receiving jury instructions telling them not to discuss pretrial publicity, jurors, quote, spent a significant amount of their deliberation time, close quotation, discussing pretrial publicity. I wonder about our juror in Delphi. How much of those 19 hours were spent discussing pretrial publicity? Other jurors not only failed to reprimand their fellow jurors for bringing it up, they acknowledged the fact that what was being discussed was from pretrial publicity and decided to discuss it anyway. The subjects commonly presented facts only heard in the pretrial publicity as facts presented at trial. The subjects responded by thinking they forgot it because of a lapse in memory and not because it was actually pretrial publicity. So I think that's a lot to think about. And it's a lot for our attorneys to go home and think about. I'm going to link this article at the end of the show or put it in the description after we're done so that a bunch of you can go and grab it and read it for yourselves. Okay, we're going to use examples now. Part 2, the pretrial publicity surrounding Stephen Avery's case. Section A. Stephen Avery was no stranger to Manitowoc County's law enforcement. The Netflix documentary, Making a Murderer, lists a number of Avery's previous offenses: assault of his cousin by running her off the road, burglarizing a bar, and setting a cat on fire. Before Stephen Avery was convicted of murdering Teresa Halbach in 2005, Avery had spent 18 years behind bars for a 1985 wrongful SA conviction of Penny Bernstein. Or I'm not saying that properly. I know these names are bad names. Okay, bad names. Bernitson was raped while she was running along a beach. And Avery was ultimately sent to prison for the crime. The county's investigation was subject to controversy. Oh, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Does that not sound familiar? I mean, listen, there's controversy for a reason. You know, I mean, usually that would be obvious to most people, but it's going to be obvious to everyone except the troll farm gaslighters, okay, and the guilty. The county's investigation was subject to controversy because Avery's alibi witness and proof of purchase evidence contradicted Bernstein's Bernstein's story. After Bernstein described the attack to the police provided her with the photos of 9 men, including that of Avery. Bernstein selected Avery's photo. At trial, she identified Stephen Avery as her grapist. However, one of Avery's alibi witnesses, a clerk at a store, remembered Avery and his family buying paint from the store. A checkout tape put the purchase at 5:13 p.m. Bernstein put the attack at 3:50 p.m. and estimated it lasted 15 minutes, which meant that Avery would have had to leave the scene of the attack, walk a mile to the nearest parking area, drive home, load his family into the car, and drive 45 miles in just over an hour. Ultimately, the jury convicted Avery, and he was sentenced to 32 years imprisonment. Woof, rough. That's rough. It's important to note that Stephen Avery and his family did not have a good reputation in their community. In reference to Avery's conviction in the murder of Teresa Halbach, one neighbor said, "If you don't live here, I can see how you would view it and think there are questions. But those of us who live here know that he's guilty." Another neighbor said, "We feel safer with him in jail. He should be locked up and throw away the key." A juror who was dismissed from the Halbach murder trial, quote, believed the jury rendered their verdict based on Avery's past and not the facts of the case, close quotation. Quote, "You have to think of all the things he did when he was younger. People who remembered those events swayed the other jurors," close quotation. In the very first episode of Making a Murderer, Risa Evans, Stephen Avery's public defender, in his essay case, narrated the Avery family's standing in the community. Manitowoc County is working class farmers, and the Avery family, they weren't that. They dealt in junk. They didn't dress like everybody else. They didn't have education like other people. They weren't involved in all the community activities. I don't think it ever crossed their minds that they should try to fit into the community. They fit into the community that they had built. Moreover, Evans pointed out that, quote, "The sheriff's department saw the Avery family as kind of a problem and definitely undesirable members of the community," close quotation. In Stephen Avery's sexual assault trial, the jury deliberated for only 4 hours and convicted Avery almost exclusively on the eyewitness account. Even though the jury had heard evidence, alibi witness accounts, and proof of purchase that made the victim's story seem implausible. The jury's quick decision making seems to corroborate results of various pretrial publicity studies that concluded that jurors exposed to negative pretrial publicity about a defendant are more likely to vote guilty. Oops. Okay. This also appears to substantiate the study by the Department of Psychology at the University of South Florida that held that juries exposed to negative pretrial publicity about a defendant are more likely to interpret ambiguous facts in favor of the prosecution. Furthermore, as the meta-analysis by the American Psychological Association suggests, because Avery was accused of SA, the effects of pretrial publicity were likely more significant. Right. And remember what they say. Because Abby and Libby were found nude at one point with Abby and Libby nude, it's inferred that there were some sexually inappropriate things that went on with those victims. So you paint a monster named Bridge Guy, okay? Also nude victims, both little innocent little girls, and then you say Richard Allen is that guy. Stephen Avery's case draws parallels to the Duke lacrosse case, in which members of the Duke University's men's lacrosse team were falsely accused of rape. In both cases, the defendants were notorious in their respective communities. With respect to the members of the Duke University men's lacrosse team, stories of boorish Duke student behavior had been in the local press. Furthermore, since 1999, about 31% of the Duke lacrosse players, that's a third, had been charged with a variety of rowdy and drunken acts. 16 of the players on the current roster had been arrested in the past 3 years. When the local press asked a neighbor about the grape incident, the neighbor said, "I'm sort of assuming it happened because they've been such arrogant kids. If you ask them to be quiet, they shout unpleasant things at you." Like I say, that makes them a rapist? Really? It's like Rick Allen not having the phone from 2017. That makes him a double child murderer? Come on, man. Oh, parking in. Remember this one? Backing into the parking space made him a double child murderer. Getting mad at Jerry Holman for trying to use his wife in an interrogation in a room. Him getting mad showed that he has the ability to get mad. Therefore, he's a double child murderer. According to the author of the Law Review article, the Duke lacrosse team's behavior corroborated the worst images of the team and indirectly the accusations themselves. Likewise, the community did not hold Stephen Avery in high regard. Because of Avery's prior run-ins with the law, his past conduct makes it easier for members of the community to jump to the conclusion that Avery can be the type of person who could potentially commit murder, just like Richard Allen, right? Because Richard Allen is not a German Baptist. Richard Allen is not the member of a motorcycle club. Richard Allen is not wealthy and owning several rental properties like the Patty family, right? Richard Allen is a nobody. He keeps to himself. He stays under the radar. He works at Walmart. He's CBS. He's got creepy eyes. He backs into parking spaces. He's not a Carroll County millionaire. He's not a Mason. So, therefore, he's a double child murderer. Avery was ultimately released from prison in 2003 when DNA evidence proved that Avery was not Berenson's attacker. DNA evidence, testing of hairs found on the victim at the crime scene pointed to a convicted felon. Oh, imagine that. Imagine that. A convicted felon. I think we have some of those in Carroll County and Delphi in particular, right? Greg Allen. As a result, Stephen Avery was released from prison on September 11, 2003. Interestingly, Avery's exoneration garnered extremely positive publicity. Steve was made out to be a hero. And I went from having sympathy to being this horrible person who made a mistake and is responsible for someone else's suffering, said the victim. Well, yeah, because you were. Because you picked the wrong person out of a lineup and this jury believed you. What's interesting that we got some DNA on Abby and Libby. Upon Avery's release, he moved back to Manitowoc County and started working at his family's local salvage yard. Oh, sounds familiar. He then filed a $36 million lawsuit against the county, its former sheriff, Thomas Kokorek, and former district attorney, Dennis Vogel. The suit alleged that the sheriff and former district attorney were negligent in their investigation and prosecution of Avery on the 1985 grape charge. Avery and his attorneys agreed to dismiss all claims against the county and settle for $400,000. Carroll County better get ready. On October 31st, 2005, 25-year-old Teresa Halbach was murdered. Authorities initially arrested Avery for being a felon in possession of a firearm. Bone fragments, teeth, and camera and cell phone pieces were found in a burn pit near Avery's trailer. Calumet County Special Prosecutor Ken Kratz charged Avery with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and possession of firearms by a felon. Kratz announced that Avery's blood was found inside Halbach's vehicle and that Avery was the last person to see her alive. An FBI lab test confirmed that the remains found at the Avery salvage yard were Halbach's. In March, Avery's 16-year-old nephew, Brendan Dassey, was arrested as co-conspirator 4 months after Halbach vanished. Dassey was charged with being a party to first-degree intentional homicide, sexual assault, and mutilating the corpse. Kratz also charged Avery with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and SA with a dangerous weapon. Circuit Court Judge Patrick Willis dismissed the first-degree SA and kidnapping charges. Avery's attorneys alleged that Manitowoc County Sheriff's officers planted evidence against Avery in retaliation for the lawsuit that Avery had filed against the county. The jury found Avery guilty of intentional homicide and being a felon in possession of a firearm, but acquitted him of mutilation of a corpse. Avery was sentenced to life imprisonment with no chance for parole for Halbach's murderer. Oh, sounds familiar, doesn't it? Doesn't that sound familiar? There were numerous instances of pretrial publicity in the case of Avery's second conviction. Avery's attorneys allege that Avery's case received negative pretrial publicity, PR, because of the overlap between Dassey's case and Avery's case. Dassey's attorneys admitted Dassey's involvement in the crime and both tried to pinpoint blame on Avery in court, as well as when they made comments to the media. Another instance of prejudicial pretrial publicity was when the state conducted 8 televised news conferences that identified Avery by name as a person of interest. The news conference provided a step-by-step recounting of the state's gruesome theory of the murder and torture of Halbach. Furthermore, many images of Avery in prison attire appeared on television and on the internet. See what I mean? This imagery, listen, human beings are essentially visual. So these visuals of Alan in the prison attire, marched around like Hannibal Lecter, they're like art, right? They go right to the subconscious. It was intentional. It was PR. It was to make him guilty. Side it was to make him guilty. Forget the presumption of innocence, and it worked. All right. The local and neighboring television stations also provided extensive coverage of the suppression motions in both Dassey and Avery cases, in which the public learned about potentially inadmissible material and the defense efforts to exclude those materials. Furthermore, Avery's attorneys alleged that editorials commenting on Halbach's family and the broadcasting of the Halbach funeral appealed to potential jurors' sympathies. You see what I'm saying here? Overall, the media attempted to portray Avery as a man who was given a second chance, but, quote, threw it away with the murder of an attractive young woman, close quotation. This added to the public's negative view of Avery due to his prior run-ins with the law. The trial judge rejected the motion filed by Avery's attorneys to dismiss the charges against Avery because of the inflammatory and highly prejudicial pretrial publicity ruling that there was no legal precedent for such action. By the time Avery's lawyers received filled out questionnaires before jury selection, most of the community had already bought into the media story. Hello? You see, you get what I'm saying here? By the time Avery's lawyers received filled out questionnaires for jury selection, most of the community had already bought into the media story. And who's the media story? The media story is the prosecutor's story. It's the state's narrative, just like DELPHI. Stephen Avery was an evil man. Every potential juror had already believed he was guilty. Barely 4 months into the case, Kratz made at least 7 statements to the press indicating Avery and Dassey implicating Avery and Dassey in Halbach's murder. These statements were likely extremely prejudicial to the Avery case, since the risk of prejudice are magnified in smaller communities because of the pervasive nature of the publicity and the likelihood that virtually the entire community will have strong feelings about the case. Okay, can we please go back to that? Can I read that again? And by the way, that is from Legal Experts Blast Avery Prosecutor's Conduct, January 4, 2016, in the Post Crescent. All right. Anyway, it said, the risk of prejudice are magnified in smaller communities like DELPHI because of the pervasive nature of the publicity and the likelihood that virtually the entire community will have strong feelings about the case. This is DELPHI. Furthermore, the statements have been highly criticized by legal experts as crossing the line of ethical conduct. Wisconsin's rule of professional conduct for prosecutors resemble those that are recommended by the American Bar Association, in which prosecutors are not supposed to make public statements prior to a defendant's trial regarding the following areas: the character credibility, reputation, or criminal record of a party, suspect in a criminal investigation, or witness, or the identity of a witness, or the expected testimony of a party or witness, the identity or nature of physical evidence expected to be presented, any opinion as to the guilt or innocence of a defendant or suspect in a criminal case or proceeding that could result in the deprivation of liberty. Information the lawyer knows or reasonably should know is likely to be inadmissible evidence in a trial and would, if disclosed, create a substantial risk of prejudicing an impartial trial. On March 2nd, 2006, Kratz began a press conference by warning children under the age of 15 years old, do not watch or listen to the press conference. However, he did not issue such a warning for those who might have been prospective jurors for the Avery Dassey trial. Kratz then proceeded to go into gruesome detail about the alleged murder of Halbach by Avery and Dassey. The prosecutor also refused to answer if there had been any physical evidence supporting Brendan's confession. At trial, the prosecutor was not able to introduce Brendan's confession because it amounted to hearsay. However, any juror who followed the press coverage of Avery's case would have obtained evidence that was inadmissible at trial. When one juror was asked why they voted guilty and what they had thought happened to Halbach, the juror replied, torture and rape. Then he shot her in the head. Then he cut her up and he put her in the burn barrel. This response is significant because evidence of Halbach being raped and tortured was not admissible in Avery's trial. Although the trial judge had instructed the jury that they were not to consider the rape and torture scenario because it was not introduced in trial, the juror's comment made it clear that information from the press conference was taken into consideration. This is consistent with the study by Ruva, Gunther, and Yarborough that found that jurors who were exposed to negative PR were significantly more likely to vote guilty. This is also consistent with the study by the Department of Psychology at the University of South Florida, which found that although jurors received jury instructions telling them not to discuss the pretrial publicity, jurors often discussed it anyways and knowingly. There is no doubt that media has the potential to greatly influence jurors. In fact, studies generally show that jurors exposed to negative pretrial publicity are more likely to judge defendants guilty compared to jurors exposed to less pretrial negative publicity, or at least more neutral pretrial publicity. In a world where people are used to receiving information in a consistent stream and from social media, media outlets have resorted to short headline-turning headlines in order to catch attention. However, it's possible for post-trial publicity from one's first conviction and pretrial publicity for one's second trial to influence jurors to convict the second time. I mean, that was a question. Is it possible? How would a post-trial publicity effort after one's second conviction potentially affect jurors in a third trial? After Stephen Avery's first conviction for the rape of Penny Bernstein, sorry, I can't get the name, the media showed no interest in his case. Although his mother tried for several years to obtain the interest of numerous national media outlets like NBC, Dateline, etc., her son's wrongful conviction, Dateline only showed interest in the Avery case after he was arrested for the killing of Teresa Halbach shortly after his release from prison. In Making a Murderer, a reporter for Dateline even indicated that murder sells stories. Relatively little had been known nationally about Avery's wrongful first conviction. But after his second arrest, the media has had its head-turning headlines. So Stephen Avery was a man who had been given a second chance but thrown it away with horrific murder of Teresa Halbach, an attractive young woman. Avery's fate was sealed. He was convicted and declared guilty. So you see, is this feeling right? Is it making sense? Nonetheless, Avery was given another opportunity to redeem himself after Making a Murderer became widely popular on Netflix. A highly acclaimed appeal attorney took on his case. Fans of Making a Murderer and Miss Kathleen Zellner uh, used their tech-savvy ways on Twitter and have currently helped renew support for Stephen Avery. As Avery appeals his case, Making a Murderer continues to gain popularity. People continue to discuss theories as to who else could have committed Halbach's murder on Reddit, and Ms. Zellner has begun to attack the evidence that put Avery behind bars through short tweets. The tide has turned, and it seems as if a growing number of people generally believe Avery is innocent. The media has begun to shift towards a positive view of Avery, now portraying him as an innocent man put behind bars. Likewise, the media has had a positive effect on the case of Adnan Syed, the subject of Serial, and the man also portrayed as wrongly convicted for the murder of his ex-girlfriend. Although Syed unsuccessfully requested to reopen his appeal and overturn his life sentence in the last dozen years, his request was finally granted after Serial's growing popularity. In 2015, Stephen Avery's appeal that there should have been a change in venue given the nature of the publicity and that the court abused its discretion when it failed to grant such a change in venue was rejected. Despite the studies and arguments that publicity does not affect jurors' perceptions of the accused, there is strong evidence that negative publicity persuaded the jurors to convict Avery a second time. If the Wisconsin Court of Appeals declares a mistrial and vacates Avery's conviction based on his claims, prosecutors would have to decide whether to retry him without the impermissible evidence. Hypothetically, assume Avery's conviction was vacated. The prosecutors did decide to retrial his case, and then the judge decided there was still no need for a change of venue. How would his current publicity affect the jurors on this case? Well, positively, right? Given that Making a Murderer has inspired multiple protests and that some rallies led by out-of-towners have occurred right outside Manitowoc County Courthouse, the community is still likely to have a negative perception of Stephen Avery. After all, Making a Murderer portrays Manitowoc as a place that sent an innocent man to prison twice. To many residents, the documentary continues to bring bad publicity and has reinforced their negative opinion of Avery. As a resident who passed out signs during one such rally declared, quote, "You don't know the community, you don't know the people, you don't know all the details of what happened." Sounds like Delphi, doesn't it? Avery's lawyers would have a hard time convicting a scarred community to give Avery yet another chance to prove he is innocent. Conversely, assume the judge decided that there was no need for a change of venue. How would potential jurors be affected by the positive publicity surrounding Stephen Avery? After all, it's almost impossible to avoid having heard of his case, especially with the popularity of Making a Murderer. For at least a couple weeks in December 2015 and January 2016, Stephen Avery was trending on Facebook. According to a study, in addition to the ones detailed in the previous sections, in which researchers had one group of participants watch negative videos about the defendant and the other group watch positive videos about the defendant, those who watched positive videos did not significantly change their judgment of the defendant as compared to those who had watched negative videos. Thus, because Making a Murderer can be considered to present a more positive, somewhat neutral view of Stephen Avery, one could argue that the jurors are less likely to have impacted judgments, leading to a fairer trial. Still, given the huge scale of media and internet access, can judges preemptively account for jurors' bias in today's new world where publicity has a faster and greater effect than before? Now, what's interesting about that to me is the findings that Positive publicity seems to have less to no effect on jurors, whereas negative publicity has a great effect on jurors, at least when it comes to defendants. But keep in mind that, as we read earlier, the painting of the situation does seem to have an effect on jurors. So, the making the victim young, innocent, beautiful, perfect, brave, heroic, all those things, the small town ideal, the day beautiful, all of these qualities, those things do have an effect on the jury. So you combine the demonization or the painting in a bad light of the accused with the painting in a positive light of the victim, and you have a recipe for disaster, which is the pervasive influence of the potential future jurors or the jurors. Mitigating bias today. Technological advances have created new forms of internet based communications, leading to unprecedented access, content, and coverage of events. Yeah, you're damn right. It's called YouTube, Twitter, right? Consequently, the advent of these internet based communications calls for a change to the way judges approach the Sixth Amendment fair trial analysis and necessitates a different way of managing the effects of publicity. And I'll comment after. Let me finish this. The right to a fair trial by an impartial jury is a fundamental constitutional right. Nonetheless, pretrial publicity, PR, of criminal trials has always had the potential to instigate juror bias by exposing prospective jurors to prejudicial information. In fact, most potential jurors are at least aware of a case prior to trial due to pre publicity exposure. Let's read that again for the idiots in the back. Okay? For the idiots in the back. Most potential jurors are at least aware of a case prior to trial due to pre-trial, pre-publicity exposure. Polls of potential jurors in areas where a trial is scheduled have tended to demonstrate a general pro-prosecution bias. Potential jurors may retain such prejudice for differing lengths of time after exposure, depending on if the information they were exposed to was emotional or factual. Accordingly, where reasonable prejudice to the defendant is likely to occur, the court generally uses methods such as extensive voir dire, sequestering, and in rarer instances, granting of a motion for change of venue. New media outlets, however, such as YouTube, Netflix, iTunes, podcasts, etc., have posed a different kind of challenges for courts. Extensive voir dire, sequestering, and rare approval of a change of venue are no longer sufficient to mitigate juror bias. Let's read it again. No longer sufficient to mitigate juror bias, especially as it becomes less and less likely that potential jurors have not been exposed to prejudicial information. For instance, due to the ease of public access, the aforementioned media outlets, including blogs or other private websites that provide the average internet user with his or her news, have in recent years outpaced traditional news sources. What does that mean? That means that these days, people get their news on the internet not from Fox 59 or ABC or NBC. Okay? People get their news on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, etc. This poses a couple of problems. First, Such media sources have great storage capacity. Any person can pull up YouTube videos from the distant past, meaning the prejudicial effects from such videos may not fade. Secondly, non-traditional media sites are often unchecked and do not have the same standards as traditional media sites. Users of YouTube, Netflix, iTunes, podcasts, etc., are able to post opinionated rather than factual videos, comments, and so forth. Sometimes these videos, comments, and podcasts contain partial facts and unconfirmed, gruesome details of the commission of a crime and direct accusations of the accused prior to trial. Yeah, like, he's going to plead, guarantee it. Finally, because such media sites are free or more affordable and often disseminate information faster through the internet, they often supplement or replace the public's use of traditional, more reliable news media. Thus, content provided on sites like YouTube, Netflix, and iTunes podcasts have outpaced traditional avenues of regulation to ensure an impartial jury. Subsequently, in pretrial prejudice 2.0, how YouTube generated news coverage is set to complicate the concepts of pretrial prejudice doctrine and endanger Sixth Amendment fair trial rights. Matthew Mastromaro comes up with ways that the court can regulate pretrial publicity and its new forms online. For example, although individuals may be exempt from a court's gag order that would otherwise reach traditional news media outlets, he suggests that attorneys can instead flag and report content to site managers and providers directly. See, now you know why we were getting struck down. The troll farm was at full tilt and we were getting struck down. He also suggests that attorneys do a keyword search regarding the crime. In this way, the attorneys can come up with media that is relevant and most searched by users. More judges might be convinced that a change of venue is needed once confronted with insight as to the possible content the jurors might have been exposed to previously, making approval of a motion for a change of venue less rare. Likewise, some sites and non-traditional media avenues keep track of who visits as well as how many people view their content. Obtaining evidence that media related to the case at hand is immensely popular, widely circulated, might help boost an attorney's argument for a change in venue. Nonetheless, these solutions have their limitations. Mastromoro points out that flagging or reporting content is not a guarantee, and that the content in question will actually be removed. That the content in question will actually be removed. In addition, privacy protections may prevent an attorney from obtaining user information to figure out whether the numerous views are the result of one person revisiting the content repeatedly. Aside from copyrighted material, users also have the right to post their opinions and may be protected by standards that argue that the internet should be free from regulation. In conclusion, there are two main ways to combat pretrial publicity and its potential to instigate biases in jurors. Judges should revise their instructions to jury members to account for technology and non-traditional forms of media, and courts should create new Sixth Amendment legal standards. New analysis that recognize the advent of such media. It is finally time that courts recognize that current standards are not adequate. Ultimately, these current standards would still fail to protect Stephen Avery or Richard Allen today. So what have we learned here? Well, we've learned that PR, especially negative PR, is extremely influential and long lasting to potential future jurors. And that jurors often take into account what they have consumed as far as negative PR as they go into deliberations. It's inescapable. Now, remember what we started with, okay? Because for more than a year now, I've been explaining to you the fact that there is an entire PR team working the Delphi murders. And I've called that team Troll Farm. Okay? The Troll Farm had, until trial, been the ones operating cross platform to make Alan guilty, definitively guilty, to make all of us out here who are speaking for due process to turn us into bad guys, threats, harassers, idiots, um, all sorts of things. You've seen, we've all been the victims of death threats, of doxing, of ongoing harassment, of defamation, attempts to discredit, uh, using our family members to harass us. You've seen all of that. You've also seen these same individuals use their own channels, right, to make Richard Allen guilty and to make us idiots, you know. So not only did they do it behind the scenes, they came and did it on their channels, right? And they continue to. And this whole time, I've said that they are doing it on behalf of the family and the state. This PR team, this troll farm. And since the sentencing and the lifting of the gag order, you now see what I've exhibited to you tonight at the beginning and the past several shows, which is that now the state actors themselves are coming to the forefront in their own PR campaign, right? To push it themselves as authorities. Why? As I said, they've got the guilty verdict. So the question is why? Well, it's very simple. Just like the troll farm did it as surrogates or vicariously for these people before the gag order was lifted, they do it now for themselves, which is the intent is to influence potential future jurors. Okay, this is why up until the moment of jury selection, Troll Farm was operating at 110% because the whole objective was to influence those jurors who were going to be selected. The moment those jurors were selected, the entire troll farm turned off like a switch. Okay? Dead silent the entire trial until the crucial verdict came. Then they reactivated, and they're now reactivated. But now they're bootstrapped by the state actors themselves. Nicholas McClelland, Pat Cicero, Jerry Holman, even Doug Carter has come out and spoken. They're all coming out now as authorities. Why? Richard Allen is sentenced. The jury has done its job, right? Ah, yeah, but you forget one crucial thing. You forget something. If an appeal and a new trial is granted, a new trial is granted. What would that mean? New jurors. That means there's still the possibility that there are potential future jurors out there this very moment. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There are still potential future jurors out here in this world when it comes to the Delphi murders. Therefore, there's still a troll farm out there doing their work. And therefore, the state actors, now that they are free to, are doing their own negative PR. Okay? And remember how I mentioned to you based on the studies, it's twofold. One, you make the victims extremely you paint them in a good light. Okay, you make them heroes, beautiful, young, innocent. The family's innocent. The family's beautiful. The family's heroic. The da da da. The cops are beautiful. The cops are heroic. Kathy Schenk is beautiful. You see, you paint everyone in a beautiful light, and then you do the opposite. For the defendant, you paint him as a monster, as a killer, as a predator, as bridge guy. Because remember, negative PR affects the potential future jurors long term when it comes to the defendant. They're going to always see him guilty. They're going to always see him as that guy, Hannibal Lecter, paraded around shackled the way he is. They're going to always see him as bridge guy. Then they're going to look at this family and these victims, and they're going to always see them as perfect, heroic, beautiful day. So both of those things are going to be long lasting with potential future jurors and carrying on into the deliberations, regardless of evidence. That was what we just learned through here. So that is why from day one, we've had this narrative because they knew this. Okay, these people have known this. So we're late to the party. We're late to the party. They've known this from the very beginning that you have to make this story. That's why Gray Hughes was employed. Go look at Gray Hughes' history, what field he comes from and what organization. Okay? PR was initiated on this case on day one. That's why the state's case against Richard Allen was no different than Gray Hughes and Kelsey's hypothesis of the crime 7 years ago. The timeline was no different. The story was no different. The fantasy was no different. And the bridge guy being the killer was no different. It's listen, the reason that Gull gave the change of venue, because she knew that not giving the change of venue was going to be an appealable offense. So she tried to predicate that or get ahead of it by going ahead and doing the change of venue. But it was merely a token, because you must understand that this case has worldwide attention. Okay, so in Indiana, I guarantee you that juror lied. Okay, she knew about the Delphi murders. She knew about Abby and Libby, as did all of them. They went there to get justice for Abby and Libby, which meant convicting Bridge Guy. So once they had a little prodding from the guys in uniform, dressed all nice, looking shiny and official and professional, as she said, on that witness stand saying, no, he's bridge guy. Even though none of the witnesses, remember, none of the witnesses who were actually there that day painted him as bridge guy. Said that's it. No. Your guys in uniform from the Indiana State Police and in the suits painted him as bridge guy. And that's all it took, because all they needed was that little shove. And all of those jurors who already were there to get bridge guy, all they needed was that little urging. And so it's no wonder, okay? Now, the real question in this day and age, what this article causes me to wonder, is how do you get around that? Because it's going to happen. I would say the best way to get around it is to not allow it, okay? Perhaps there needs to be a whole new turning of a page in the legal system, which is that the victims and prosecutors law enforcement cannot use PR, cannot use troll farms, cannot use media to affect the outcomes of their cases anymore. Make it illegal. Because you're getting into constitutional areas. How can anyone be guaranteed a fair trial when the prosecution and the families are not playing fair? They're exercising PR in order to sway the potential future jurors. And I guarantee you, every single fucking troll farm that we've ever dealt with, every single action by these family members over these years it's a one and the same goal. And they all knew what they were doing. And crimes have been committed. As I said, McClellan can whine all he wants to about someone threatening to slash his tires. We've been constantly under emotional distress from the repeated death threats, harassment, ongoing harassment, the doxing, the smear campaigns, and the defamation in order to try to ruin our credibility. So I think that the feds not only need to look into Delphi as an investigation, I think that the Supreme Court probably needs to head in this direction, or at least the feds or the cyber crimes. I don't know. There needs to be a top-down approach to this sort of thing, because how many cases can this campaign be used on to affect the outcome? How many cases are going to allow troll farms to run absolutely unchecked, criminal underworld to run absolutely unchecked, to influence the outcomes of those future cases? So I meant what I've said from day one, and I mean it now. It's a difficult situation. We've all been victimized. Crimes have been committed, and it needs to be addressed. All right. Well, I want to thank. I had a couple of super chats come in while I was reading, and I want to thank. I believe it was Chevy Killer, and Mark Ellis. Thank you so much, Chevy Killer and Mark Ellis. I'm calling you the sponsors for the show tonight. Chevy Killer, Mark Ellis. You guys are awesome. But at the end, I'll thank everyone else who sent in a super chat. Thank you very much. Thank you for hitting the like And especially those of you, all of you in the chat, thank you for being here. Thank you for being in this chat while I've been doing all that reading. All right, so we made it. We made it. I think I'm done. I thought I'd be done in an hour and a half. I thought it'd be a short show tonight. I'm ready for dinner, but I'm glad to see you all here and try to put a few comments up here. Yeah, got some nice comments everywhere through here. Thank you very much, Kate Eleanor from England. Thank you. And remember, not only do we have death threats, okay, but we have people who were doing the harassing and death threatening, admitting that they were paid to do what they did. They do. You know, you can't make this shit up. We have people. Look, some of the trolls were literally there February 13th, 2017. Literally. Some other of the trolls have admitted that they were paid to do what they do, and then some of them are related, and some of them made plea deals. So it's pretty bad. All the feds have to do is actually investigate, and I think they will. Well, anyway, thank you, Miss K. Thank you, Kayla, Woman Doing, Valencia's mom. What's up? Tracy Fleetwood, Pert Innit, Sweet Dude Shibby, Heather Brown, Woman Doing. What up, sexy? Don't Dox Me, Miss K, Missouri Mimo of 9, Kaleida Hope, Criminal Network, 5 Green Acres, Who's Your Daddy, Kate Eleanor, Trial Junkie. We got K. Damn. We got Kaleida Hope, Rhonda Holton. I don't know if it said 5 Green Acres, but what's up? What's up, DEI Cat America? We got Rebecca N, 1965. What's up, Rebecca? Don't Dox Me. We got, who else in here? Rambo Bambo. What's up? We got CT Girl 5150. I don't know if it said Pert in it, but what up, Pert in it? We got Jay. Jay right here with an awesome comment. What's up, Jay? We got Hey Christina. We got geez, nobody nutting 1717. What's up? What's up? We got Jake Brooks. Tracy Fleetwood. We got all the gangsters in here. Okay. Nancy Drew 101. Everybody's here tonight. I'm so glad you were all here. It's a Thursday. I almost didn't do it, but I'm glad I did it. So tomorrow will be Friday. We should enjoy tomorrow. We have the Arctic Blast coming in this weekend. So if you guys are gonna you guys are gonna do anything, make sure you do it tomorrow because Saturday, Sunday, Monday, it's gonna be pretty intense. Okay. We got Queen Christine. Who else we got up in here? All the greatest, man. You guys are always here. I just love you so much. Heather Brown and Kayla and Steve Z Stubbs, Fur Baby Daddy. Fur Baby Daddy, what up? I wasn't ignoring you, by the way. I saw that. I wasn't ignoring you. Little Green. Who else is in here I haven't said hello to yet? Well, put your name down below. Okay. Put your name down below. If I haven't said hello, I'm not going any further up in the chat. But those who super chatted, that's Jer, Jamie Boyd, Jamie Boyd again, Steve Z Stubbs, JT, of course, Mark Ellis, Jake Brooks, Chevy Killer. Uh, Thank you for the super chat. You guys have been more than generous tonight. I just appreciate you. Silent, hey, what's up, Silence? What are you doing here? I thought you were on vacation. We got Silenced. Tina Martina from the Netherlands. What's up? She's there. Okay. Yeah, everyone was here tonight. What a beautiful group. Love your show. Can't wait for the next one. Well, catch the replay, okay? Yeah, that leads me to my little advertisement I give at the end of every show, which is please, if you're on the replay, hit the comment section down below. Unfortunately, you may have missed the live chat, but don't worry, you still got the comment section that you can add your beautiful voices to. So come on and leave some comments down below. I really appreciate that. You can also hit the Cash App. Please be aware we have Cash App and Buy Me a Coffee, and I really do appreciate those. Those kind of fuel me. Honestly, they really do fuel me when the stress is high and the times are tough. The Cash Apps, Buy Me a Coffees, and the thumbs up and the comments in the comment section, all that stuff fuels me. So I really do appreciate that, and appreciate you being here, and enjoy the replays. If you happen to miss the live stream, sorry that I'm not live all the time. I'd love to be, but I'm not. But please feel free to make a lot of enjoyment of the live streams, okay? As we got so many live streams down there in the video section and the past live streams. So enjoy the channel. We did a great one yesterday. I hate to say it, but basically mocking our juror because she was pretty shameful, only in her immaturity. You know, if someone's life wasn't on the line, I wouldn't necessarily care about it. You know, if this was like just a little traffic accident, but she was a juror, it'd be one thing. But she seemed to be pretty immature, like 12 years old, and someone's life was on the line. By that I mean Richard Allen. It was pretty infuriating, and so we were pretty mean to her, but didn't intend to be. I went into it with the best of intentions, but I ended up just being myself. So, but we did that show yesterday. It was pretty good, and I did a few on Holman. So let's see. We got Faith Ross. What's up? Thank you, Prof, for another great show. Night, everyone got it very early. Thank you for being here and saying hello. All right, we got. Oh, Christina's reminding me. We got the backup channel and the main channel. So please be aware. We have both channels: main channel, backup channel. So catch them both. Um, Heather Brown. What's up? I am on a what? What does a black heart mean? What does black heart mean? I'm on a black heart. I buy chocolate. I do buy chocolate, and I buy coffee. Literally, I only do organic coffee. So I gotta admit to you, never do Starbucks because they don't have organic anymore, or never did. I don't know. I stopped with the Starbucks because I'm pretty addicted to having only organic coffee. So I do buy organic coffee and chocolate, uh, but it does keep my spirits up when you support the channel. Appreciate it. I miss you dearly, my professor. We're the Dark Hearts. Oh yeah. That's what they tried to make us, the Dark Heart, the Dark Hearts of the fans of Richard Allen. I've said to someone earlier today, I'm not here for Richard Allen. Truly, I'm here for Abby and Libby, or Abigail and Liberty. Okay, I don't even like using Abby and Libby anymore. That's kind of fetishization as well to try to make them into some of these adorable little pets. Look, Abigail and Liberty, I'm here for them. Richard Allen, he's just caught in the mix, okay? He's caught up in this mix. So it was great to see you, Aldo. I need unseasonable doubt. Beyond an unseasonable doubt. All right. Teresa, what's up, Teresa? Oh, you guys did come in before I got out of here. Okay, so let's see who we got in here. Say some more names. Okay. Okay, well, let's see who came in. intimidation, tactics, lies, doxing. That's why they've run everyone off the case. That's what I'm trying to say to you guys. It's been a PR effort from the start, which is why they were so abusive and utilized the troll farm harassment, all that shit. It's been absolute control of this since day one. You got to wonder why. And as I often say, I don't even wonder what happened. I wonder what would be worth. Well, why would they do all of this? I don't have the answer yet, but I'm assuming it's some human trafficking, maybe meth trafficking, Sinaloa cartel. There's something deeper here that we haven't gotten to the bottom of yet. All right, so we got let's see, Rhonda. I said hi to Kate Eleanor. Who else is in here? Mandy. Thank you, Mandy. All right, thank you, Nancy Drew, Teresa, Jaylyn, Swade Smith is in here. Who else we have in here that I've missed? Oh, Digital. What's up, Digital? Digital is here and sleepy. All right, we got Faith Ross. I don't want to miss anyone. Don't dox me. Says hello, but she's being shy. Doesn't want to be doxed. Rambo Bambo, as I've said. Who's your daddy? All right. Yes, please like both channels. Please, please, please. We got. Oh, I got everyone. So there we go. Okay. Applause to you all. Applause to you all. Yeah, there are many victims. And trust me. What's up, Stephanie? What's up? Thank you, Stephanie. We believe that there are dead victims, right? We believe there's dead. They're not just victims who are living. We believe there are dead victims of this contingent, call it what you will, this criminal enterprise. So God bless you. Yeah, I was going to be totally nice. I just couldn't. I read the first two sentences and I was triggered. I got triggered. So anyway, God bless you all. Peace out. Hug your kids. Hug your wife. If you're in Delphi, hide your kids. Hide your wife and your kids and your wife and all of them and your dogs. But God bless you guys. So we're out of here. Hopefully see you tomorrow for Friday show if I can make it happen. Hopefully I have a special guest. I'm working on that. So I'll see you. God bless. God bless Libya Never. Good night.
Thank you.